Welcome back to your favorite podcast, the podcast that keeps you company, appointment only. The podcast everybody's talking about. The podcast of 2026. Didn't they just have... Yeah, there we go. This is the future. The future podcast. The future of podcasts
Didn't
is
they
here.
just have there are podcast awards. Did you know that?
Well, no.
We weren't invited to them.
This is the first I'm hearing of the podcast awards.
I just know that both Amy Poehler and Will Arnett's podcast won big awards.
Will Arnett's podcast as in Smartless?
Yeah, Smartless. Okay. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, they're quite the podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
And a year from now, they're going to be talking about us. They're going to say, can you believe we lost our awards to appointment only?
The appointment only cleaned up at the awards.
It's like one of those...
It's the Slumdog Millionaire story.
Exactly. And boy, are we a couple of dogs.
That's right. Slumdogs.
Yeah. Slumdogs over here. Cheers to 2026. First episode of 2026. It's, I have to say, it's really frustrating trying to celebrate New Year's Eve because you can't watch the damn ball drop anymore.
We didn't even try.
Well, we've tried the last few years, and the only way, because you know how they used to do it when we would watch it growing up, was they would delay everything an hour,
right?
So you would get the ball drop in your own time zone. Well, now you have to watch it at 11 p.m., which is midnight in New York. But then they just continue on with the broadcast. So we tuned in at 11:30, and they were on to the next thing. They were bouncing all around the world trying to, show what was going on. But there was no way to replay it because it was still airing live. So that's an example of, I'm all about streamers. I pay for all the streaming services. I don't have a problem with that. It's, it's stupid, of course, especially when you're trying to watch something like the Vikings game. What streamer is this on this week?
Right.
But I think they've ruined New Year's Eve because there's no way to watch the ball drop live anymore, and you can't catch what you want to catch.
Yeah, they'll kick you over to New Orleans.
It's so annoying,
horrible.
There was one that was airing on Paramount Plus that was happening in Nashville, which we tried to tune in, and we just were so bored that we just ended up watching a Friends episode. So that's what we did.
We were watching Stranger Things.
Yeah, whatever. It's just another day. Every day technically is a new year, right? So it's never too late to start your New Year's resolutions. I hate that word, but this is the perfect time to make changes to your business that can affect you in positive ways.
And I'm sure you're listening to this and we're healthily into January. Not sure exactly what day this episode is going to air, but nobody
we're award-winning podcasters. We can't be bothered with the details.
Yeah, we can't keep track of it all.
It's just we're so in demand that we're just cranking out content. And you'll get it when you get it.
That's right. But nobody who is going to your website or inquiring about working with you from a business perspective, nobody is going to be surprised if you have a policy that's different this year, or if your prices look differently than they did in a previous year. This is the excuse. We've talked so much in this podcast. In pretty much every episode, I feel like the idea of raising your prices, being the best, comes up. And everybody's is wondering when that time is going to feel right to raise their prices. Well, new year, new you. New year, new prices.
On a personal note, we are in the middle of a huge transition, the biggest transition our business has ever had.
But that is true. And that's pretty crazy to think about, actually.
I know. 2026 is going to be a very, very different year for us. We're moving to a new location, it's not the first time. This is going to be our fourth location we've moved to. However, it is the first time where our location is in a different city. We're moving to the burbs. We're opening up a space that's 3 times the size of where we're operating now. It's been a much longer project than we anticipated or than we were told to expect, as you know how construction projects go. But this has certainly been in line with that, where it's been months and months of build out. We are so excited, but we are feeling so out of sorts. So, technically we have 2 home bases, but we really feel kind of homeless right now because We're
Unhoused.
Excuse me. Unhoused. Yes. Why is that better than homeless?
I don't know.
I don't understand that one. I'm all for, like trying to be nicer to, and use nicer words than we've always used, but I don't understand how unhoused is better than homeless.
Me neither.
Whatever. Anyways, we're homeless. We're not unhoused. We're straight up homeless.
Yeah,
at this
straight
point.
up.
We have a bunch of stuff in in boxes, and after we record these episodes, we're actually headed to the new spot. We're going to see what progress they made yesterday, hoping to start, unboxing things. But oh my gosh, I hate this feeling of unsettledness. I thrive on routine. That's one of my initial New Year's resolutions, for lack of a better term, the beginning of 2026 here. I'm really looking forward to getting back in a regulated rhythm where I can predict where I'm going to be and just getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, we're definitely creatures of habit, I would say. And so when we're not in our rhythm and we feel like we don't have a routine, when we feel like our mornings are more often than not being taken up by miscellaneous construction meetings or random Zoom calls about this thing or that thing, or a rebrand session with our company we hire, that really throws us off.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked about routines and rhythms on this show before, but it is one of those things where we're kind of living in this zone of discomfort. And I'm really looking forward to being able to turn the page on this stage.
Absolutely. Let's dive in and talk about today's episode, what flipping burgers taught us about running a business. Now, the title itself is, it's a little kitschy. Everyone uses, flipping burgers, but would you believe we told you we actually did used to flip burgers? I'm sure you would believe it. It's not that unbelievable. But it was one of the jobs we had growing up. We had a bunch of really random jobs. So today we're just going to talk through some of these jobs and some of the lessons we learned and that we continue to use in our business today as a result of these menial labor tasks.
Yeah, we did have a lot of different jobs that we did in like the middle, junior high is what it used to be. Junior high through high school era of work. I remember we had friends who their job was they would mow lawns. They had like riding mowers and they had a trailer and they would get, these contracts for the bank. I remember I'd, go to the bank and I would see my friend Grant or with the school, and Grant would be mowing. Mm-hmm. Ryan mowed lawns too. I remember.
I mean, it's a great gig,
right? But different. Like their mowers were more like commercial, so they would get those gigs. Where we mowed lawns too, residentially.
That didn't even make the list.
Oh man!
You know what I forgot to ask for Christmas was a new iPad case.
That would have been a real easy gift for people.
It would also be easy for me to just buy one.
That's true.
Just add it to my Amazon cart. How hard would that be? Well, anyways. Mowing lawns didn't actually make it on our list, but of course it was something that we did not only for free at our house, but for money for other people. All those stupid jobs that we had to do. I remember thinking we were just such servants at our house.
Yeah. Oh, we have to do everything.
I do remember there were some lessons I learned growing up. Like I remember telling myself, which I actually did this year, we spent an entire weekend working on putting a patio in the back of the house. And I remember telling myself, I'm never going to do this as an adult. I'm never going to spend this kind of time to do a patio. And this past year, I paid for someone to come do a patio at my house. Spent a lot of money on it, but I also didn't have to spend any time of my own time doing it. Same as set of oil changing.
Right.
My dad he taught us how to change our own oil. I did it once. It took hours. We went to and from the hardware store a couple of times. And then we had to figure out, where do we put all this old oil? I remember thinking, I'm never going to do that.
Well, you also had to have like this special metal ramps that you drove your car up onto.
Which freaks me out a little bit. And then you're under the car. Like what happens if the thing shifts?
Those ramps were big. And I remember in our garage at home, they had like a special, we had like a ramp place. Mm-hmm. They hung up on the wall.
Well, and I remember thinking we were saving just boatloads of money doing our oil changes. And then asking Dad, how much money would we have spent if we would have gone to Walt's and done this? And Dad was like, yeah, we just, you could have spent about $30. We're thinking, $30 for my afternoon back? Sign me up. But what are the menial jobs that we had, and what are the things that we learned? The first one we have on the list, and now this is only applicable. You'll only understand what we're talking about if you grew up outside city limits here.
Right. Outside, if you grew up in It doesn't necessarily have to be farm country, but this is what happens. This is a farm job.
Our first ever job. How old were we the first year we got hired to do this?
This would have been probably like a 6th, 7th grade situation.
We were rock pickers.
And essentially what that is
try to imagine what you could possibly be doing as a rock picker.
You go and you pick up rocks. you go to a field, and I know that there's some different ways to do it. The way that we would do it is,
of the ways to do it, by the way, I feel like we did it the worst way.
Yeah, I'm sure we did it the worst
way. The heaviest way.
But we would meet at like first light. So
first light.
Grossly early in the morning.
We'd wake up, the rooster would crow.
Pretty much. I mean, it was like 5 a.m. as we would meet up.
I don't think
because we would try to get the majority of it done before like peak sun.
Okay, sure.
So we would meet up
from first light to peak sun.
Yeah, first thing in the morning. And there would be the farmer there with his tractor, Steve, and he was pulling a big trailer. And we would just go through, think of like mowing your lawn, where you take it in straight lines. Only we would do this through a field. And we would go very, very slow, and we would just pick up rocks and throw them in the trailer.
Yep. Pick up a rock, throw it in the trailer. Find, there's another rock. Better throw it in the trailer.
The best it ever got was when there was a rock that was so big that the tractor had to stop.
Yep.
And then the crowbar had to come out.
The crowbar from the front basket.
Yeah, the front basket crowbar had to come out. And then we would have to spend, 5 or so minutes digging it out. But it's like a little bit of relief, water break. But that was about as comforting as that job ever got.
The best part of picking rock was when there was big rock to pick.
A big rock to pick. Well, the best part was lunch.
And then when we called it a day. The thing about picking rock, though, is it had to happen at a specific point in the season, because it was before they harvested is when you're supposed to get all the big rocks out. And I remember being so confused as to what the hell, we picked this field 2 years ago. How are we back, and where did the rocks come from?
That is a good question.
I know. Like the huge rocks. It's not like we missed them.
Well, and it's not like in your own yard at home. It's not like rocks just show up.
No, they don't.
Granted, we're not like tilling soil and digging into the ground and doing any of that. But that's a question for all of you scientist regulars out there.
Our archaeologists.
Yeah, our archaeologists. Where do rocks come from, and why do they come back to the same places?
And I was trying to think, what is the lesson? What is the takeaway that we learned from picking rock? Because all things considered, that job is one where you can turn your brain off and you can just go rock.
We had a friend named Sergio who I would say our rock picking days, we actually did it almost every year, like through, I think, graduating high school.
We did it.
But our first year, it was like a social thing where the farmer, Steve, he let his daughter do it, and our sister got to do it with us. And they were absolutely no help.
Trash.
And it was like friends tagging along. And there were like 20 of us kids.
I can't think of a better way to socialize.
But everyone got like $5 an hour. And it was but then as it got on, you could tell Steve actually wanted to get these fields.
These rocks needed to get picked.
So then it turned into, it was like you, me, and our friend Sergio. Sergio was built to be a rock picker.
Yeah, if you think exactly what you're picturing.
Low center of gravity, strong, like that guy.
Like dad strength.
Yeah, he had like dad strength as a high schooler.
Yeah.
And he was just a maniac. Maniac in the field.
Nobody picked rock like Sergio.
Nobody picked rock like Sergio. But I remember that year when we got our final checks after we had done that week of rock picking, it was like, we actually made good money doing this.
That one felt good. I honestly, at this point in my life, I would pick rock again.
There are certain jobs I look back on, and I would do it for free for a day.
Absolutely. It would be fun if, get the right crew of people together. I'll pick some rocks. Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Sounds
awesome.
But as I was thinking, what did I learn about picking rock other than rocks?
Rock.
Appear out of nowhere. Pick it up. Rock. Put it in the trailer. You know what I learned about picking rock that actually has stuck with me forever? It's the lesson that not every job is meant to give you fulfillment, and it's called work for a reason. I think for some reason,
boomer alert.
I have a boomer take, and it's coming in hot. I'm a millennial, of course, and I think millennials do this, and I think Gen Zers do this as well. We have this tendency to think that work is supposed to be enjoyable all the time. Like, oh, well, this job doesn't fulfill me, so I need to find something that fulfills everything that I need.
Well, I think that's the key. I think that's the word. It's fulfillment versus enjoyment. I think millennials are capable of doing something that isn't necessarily enjoyable, but they do expect for it to fulfill them to a degree that jobs are not meant to fulfill us in
I think
that
there's
capacity.
this really weird, and we're going to get into the specifics on millennials, especially versus boomers at some point in a future episode. I know we've talked about it before. That's going to be one where we're going to have to sit down and really plan it out, because I don't want to be flying, off the seat of my pants and saying the wrong thing. But I think millennials are a very interesting generation, because depending on where you fall in terms of older versus younger, or even just what you've experienced as a millennial, I think some millennials have the craziest work ethic I've ever heard of. And then others, that lesson didn't really land. And there's a huge range. And I'm sure this is true of every generation. I happen to be in the millennial generation, so I notice it more in millennials, because those are the people that I know. They're the people that I grew up with. They're the people that I'm friends with on Facebook.
That's right.
And Instagram. So you see these types of people. But I think you're right that maybe it's not enjoyment so much as it is fulfillment. But as millennials, we have had to work our way through 3 different recessions, hopefully not 4, 3 different recessions, crazy job market. We're the first generation where a college degree doesn't mean you're going to get a job. So we have, it's not like we have had no hardship, but I do think that there's this tendency to think that jobs in general are supposed to not only earn you money, but earn you fulfillment. And I disagree with that, partly because you don't get fulfillment out of every job.
I think it's just faulty expectations that our generation has a tendency to place on work. And I think some of it comes from the majority of our parents worked these long, dare I say, fulfilling careers and then retired. And that's what the majority of, like, you think about our friends and what their parents did. Almost all of our friends' parents were working in the same job the entire time that we knew those friends.
Yeah, bouncing around jobs was not common. And it also, presumably, was what they had their degree in. You get your degree in something you're passionate about. You then get a job in something you're passionate about. And then you work a job you're passionate about until you retire.
So that was modeled for us at home as millennials for the most part. And I know there are exceptions to that rule, but I think as we millennials entered the job market and the economy was a little bit different than it was in our parents' day and age, we expected that same level of fulfillment that we thought our parents were getting from their jobs. Maybe they weren't. I mean, there's a high likelihood that our parents didn't feel 100% fulfilled in their jobs either, but for some reason we felt like they did. So we have these expectations that I'm going to go and I'm going to get a job, and it's going to meet not only my need to make an income, but it's going to bring me something additional. It's going to be something I'm passionate about. It's something that, I feel like gives me this deeper meaning. And it's like, it's not a guarantee.
Sometimes it's just not going to be like that. And you just have to do your time. You just have to pick rock for a while. And then eventually you can explore other things. But not every job is meant to fulfill you in each aspect. And there will be things. I mean, I think about the other jobs that I had growing up that we'll talk through, but also like the career jobs I worked. There were things about that was fulfilling, and there were a lot of things about them that weren't fulfilling.
I mean, even in the job that we do now, running our own business, there are still so many rock-picking responsibilities that we have. And I think many people that are our age, they use that as an excuse for why they need to go find something else to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just, you're missing the mark if you expect, if you have unrealistic expectations for your job or your career. It's the same thing that we talk about and we harp about with our clients. Like, how about you have some realistic expectations so that I can rock your world, as opposed to having unrealistic expectations that I'm never even going to come close to hitting. We owe it to ourselves to have realistic expectations for the jobs that we have or the businesses that we built, so that those businesses can pleasantly surprise us, as opposed to just frustrate us because we feel like sometimes we're picking rock.
And you know what? That's a great reminder as we're kicking off a new year. Think about these things in terms of expectations and keeping it realistic. You don't want to, go from never working out in your life to saying, I'm going to work out every day for the rest of my life and be a bodybuilder and win Mr. Olympia. You got to be realistic. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. So we picked rock from the time we were, I don't know, like 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah, what would be considered middle school in today's day and age.
Through high school. We also, I believe we were 14 or 15 at the time that we worked at the county fair as burger flippers.
We were 14 or 15 because we biked there. We did not drive.
That's why I'm guessing it was 14 or 15. So we, not to brag, but we did flip burgers at the county fair, the Candy Ojai County Fair.
We flipped burgers. We made corn dogs. What else did we do?
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs, yeah, obviously.
Were there fries?
I'm sure there were fries.
I feel like there maybe weren't fries.
Maybe not. Everybody can picture.
All I remember though, well, that's not all I remember from the job, but one core memory from the job was I was putting fried onions on a burger and I was talking to someone and I actually accidentally put the fried onions all over the palm of my hand and I played it really cool. I didn't even wince. That person has no idea that I burned the shit out of the palm of my hand from fried onions while I was having a conversation with them. But I did. But I kept this game face.
Yeah, and then your hand like bubbled out,
Yep.
and you had to have like a big bandage on it the next day.
Did. It was pretty cool, But so the county fair, the Candy Ojai County Fair, this job was one that I feel like every job we got was some connection to someone from church. Our dad is a pastor and everything we did was from church. So I think there was some connection to someone from church. But the guy who owned the burger stand was a college professor who traveled in the summers to county fairs and sold burgers. And that was his side hustle. And what a side hustle that would be,
That'd be interesting.
The people you'd meet. Oh boy.
Well, there's a lesson right there. Is one of the things that our mom used to say when we'd grow up is you can never have enough extra credit and your teacher can never like you enough. And this college professor happened to teach at the college that we actually
this
went
is all
to.
Very happenstance, the way that this worked out.
And both of us waited until the final semester of our senior year to take the required math class. There's only one, it was like intro to math or something like that was required on the college level that everybody in school had to take. We waited till our final semester, senior year to take it. But because we had worked with this guy before, he loved us. He thought we were the best. And we passed. I think we both got high C's.
Yeah, math is notoriously my worst subject. So the fact that we had a professor who already liked us was very
So this
very
job,
helpful.
we were really investing in our future.
It was an investment in the future. And
This job taught us how to make investments.
this job also taught me how to do that thing where you count change back. Because this was way back when people didn't have credit cards. He didn't have a credit card swiper. Everything's cash. So you had to, make change for people. And it was that reverse counting where you can make change really quick. I learned that and it was like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I totally get that. So that was a great lesson that I learned, which came in handy for another job that I worked down the road, which we'll get to. But what was a lesson that you can identify from the county fair?
Well, it's in line with picking rock, where not everything's going to be fun and not everything is going to bring you all the enjoyment. Because I remember having to serve my friends. They were at the fair enjoying it,
Buying cheeseburgers.
and I was working
from all the
fair.
rides.
And I obviously,
what's going on? You guys going to the demo derby? Have a good time. If you get hungry, you know where to find
have you
me.
looked at the horses yet? Some beautiful stags.
I do remember we were near the horse barn and that was the bathroom we had to use, was in the barn.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, this is absolutely disgusting that I'm washing my hands in a horse barn and then I'm serving burgers.
But sometimes you have to do things that are not the most fun things. You have to do things you don't want to do. That would be what I would think back on, I guess, with that job specifically is like, yeah, you learned how to count change. And yeah, I learned how to like flip burgers.
There's only so many lessons you can learn for your future if you're not going to be in the restaurant business from,
I do
stacking burgers.
Something I did recognize though is like, interesting. He's doing this additionally, but he's also a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So What's that all about? As a 14, 15-year-old identifying like, oh, he's doing this to make money. So this must be a income earner for him. It's not like he's doing it for fun because he makes so much money teaching math at the liberal arts college.
Yeah. I remember always thinking that the white collar jobs were the most lucrative, and not true.
No.
That was a lesson we learned growing up where we grew up. You think about the farm, the people working at these, why do they do these jobs? A lot of times it's in the family. Sometimes it's just because that's where the money is. I remember being like floored when I learned what plumbers make, mechanics. There are some amazing, amazing careers you can have that don't involve you buying a suit from me.
Yeah.
Let's just say. Another thing, last thing we'll say about flipping burgers. This isn't really a lesson I learned so much as it's a memory I have. I remember someone we knew came and he ordered a double. And I thought, wow, that wasn't on the menu. It was off menu.
Off menu item.
Double stack. But what we did, we asked the professor who we worked for, his name was Vaughn. We asked Vaughn, I don't remember what he charged for it, but I remember being like, oh, we can charge whatever we want because it's not on the menu.
Off menu.
So that was kind of a good lesson to learn. All right. So that was something we did before we could drive. As soon as we got our driver's license, now all of a sudden the options are endless for the jobs we could have.
The world is our oyster.
The world is our oyster. We then were in the position where we were such an easy target for any odd job you can think of because there's two of us.
And we grew up in a big church too. It wasn't like this tiny congregation of 100. It was like 1,000 plus. So with the King Boys, it's the same reason why everybody like through college that was getting married wanted us to be ushers. Because there's two of us and we look the same. Right? So we're easy target for being ushers.
And I'm going to say when, the odd jobs thing, it wasn't necessarily two for the price of one, but looking back, I'm thinking they probably did get a pretty good deal getting two employees who carpooled together and could do. One of the things I learned from doing these jobs, we should talk about some of the specific jobs. One of the things that I learned through doing odd jobs together, which these people who hired us must have learned too, is that we have a synergistic ability to work together and complete tasks much faster than even sometimes twice as fast. When we're doing things together, there's two of us. So presumably you'd think, okay, well, they can get that job then done twice as fast as just one person. Well, the way our brains work, there is a weird sort of connection. We cannot read each other's minds, although sometimes we sort of. But there's this weird ability within work that we have to be like synergistically accomplishing things, which is just to say we're able to somehow accomplish things so much better, more efficiently, faster than twice as much. I don't really know how to explain. It's really, really difficult to explain. But I remember realizing this when we were doing our odd jobs together is we're able to complete these tasks much faster than even twice as fast as one person could do it.
Yeah, one thing I learned from doing odd jobs is that was our first foray into like charging people or telling people what something was going to cost. There was a point in time where I think our mom was like pimping us out. Saying that we would do something for X price. But then I remember there were a couple jobs we got where the people would ask us, so what will this cost?
I remember learning that lesson. Mom shouldn't be setting my prices.
Yes, seriously.
There's a lesson to learn.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
But there were a couple jobs where we were put kind of in that driver's seat. And it was my first experience because I was always under the impression that things costed this or this job equals this dollar amount. Mm-hmm. And then realizing, oh, that's not the way that life works. The way life works is based on the size of the project, the amount of work, the level of convenience that the person who's hiring us wants.
The importance, the time
that
of it.
Dictates the cost more so than, oh, well, $5 an hour picking rock or $25 for this lawn.
Also our first foray into charging per project.
True.
Which then, of course, now you're motivated to work fast versus charging per hour. Much different. It's much different to quote a price. I remember one job when we were responsible to, it was essentially to haul away I don't know if it was 10 years, a decade worth of grass clippings
Oh,
someone's backyard because they were trying to sell the house. And they had just for 10 years or whatever, just
they had bagged their yard and dumped it in their own yard.
dumped it in their own yard, dumped it in the back because it was, I don't know if it was like a tall grass area or something, whatever. It was out of sight enough for them. But then when they were trying to sell the house, I think they realized this is a pretty big eyesore. We should probably get rid of this decade of grass clippings. So our job was to load up the back of our truck, haul, I don't even remember how many loads to and from the brush site, but we charged per the project. And I remember thinking, because it took us like 2 days, and I think we charged $250 each. It was like $500 total. This, guys, keep in mind, this is the early 2000s here. The 2000, I don't know if it was 2004, 2003, something like that. But that was the job that we did. And thinking we made bank.
Oh, yeah.
$250 for 2 days work when you're in high school. Like that's pretty good because all of our friends are working jobs for $5 an hour. So that's pretty damn good if you ask me. Another job we did was landscaping, which
this is my favorite one.
This is another, speaking of jobs you do for free.
So before we talk about this one, let's talk about some other ones and then we'll end with that because that's, I think, both of our favorites.
Okay.
Obviously, we mowed lawns. I mean, that was something that we did. And it was one of those things where that was just kind of like set price for this lawn, load up the truck with a couple of mowers, do the lawn, get paid. Nothing exciting.
I feel like
about
it was
that.
all like really bad money though. It wasn't like $20, but that's big money in high school. But I remember even at the time knowing that my friends were making like $40 for a yard. Would you even spend? I would never spend, even now, today in 2026, I would not pay someone $40 to mow my yard.
Well, no, because you kind of like doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy mowing mine and doing it when I see it's getting a little long or we had a couple days of rain and then a day of sun. So I want to go out and mow my yard.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't, no, I don't have to pay a service to do that. I don't want to. But with the lawn mowing, I remember we had 4 yards in the same neighborhood.
That was like a hack for sure.
And I want to say
working smarter, not harder.
There we go.
We were doing it even then. We were figuring out how do we work smarter rather than harder. And I remember one of them we recruited because we were mowing a yard for some really old person who was like homebound or something. And their next door neighbor was the father of our barber. And I don't remember how
small town here.
I know. It sounds like I'm making this up, but I promise you I'm not. And we somehow got that yard as well. And now all of a sudden we don't even have to move our truck.
I think those yards were 35, and the other ones that we had for a little bit longer, one was like our best family friends. That was like a $25 yard, and then there was a neighbor to them that was an additional 25. So, that's $50 for those two plus another 70. That's $120 for, it was about an hour and a half is what it would, I think, take.
Back then I hated mowing the lawn though. I like it now. You know what we didn't even put on the list? Not only we didn't put mowing lawns on the list, we didn't even include paper out on here. We had a paper out.
That was a least favorite job of mine.
I hated that job. That was the first job we ever had because we started that one when we were in grade school, which I don't think you can do that anymore. I think the world is too, fucked up to be able to send your grade school kids out on their own at 6 a.m. walking around neighborhoods.
I remember every month there was a carrier of the month, and the West Central Tribune would feature one of their paper boys
or girls.
Paper people.
Yeah.
Feature one of their paper
people. It was
people.
very woke.
Yeah. Very woke small town.
What did they call them? Carriers, not
carrier
people.
of the month.
They were not gendered. It was just carrier.
But I remember wanting that so bad.
And why did we want it?
I don't know. Just to be in the paper.
Recognition is recognition.
Yeah.
Any press is good press.
Yeah, all press is good press. Wanting it so bad. And then I think we shared the route. So every other day, one of us would wake up and do it, and then the other one would sleep.
Yes, but talk about we learned how to negotiate very early in our lives as twins and compromise. So the schedule was every other day. So the way it worked out would be like, let's say this week I have Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That means Danny has Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Okay, no paper on Sunday, which means then Danny now has the next day, which means he's now on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So whoever had Saturday also had to do Monday, which sucked.
Yeah.
But once you did Monday, you were kind of set for 2 weeks. So it was a little weird, but it made sense for us. And that's how we did it. We shared the route. So it was every other morning. We didn't do it together. It was like one person sleeps in, one person has to get their ass out of bed and trudge through the elements to get the papers delivered.
But the carrier of the month feature was not based on performance, not based on number of papers or consistency of the route. It was just simply a rotational thing. And I remember the first month that we were no longer doing it, we had passed it to our little brother.
We had passed the baton.
That next month, guess who wins carrier of the month?
Tim King. Congratulations to Carrier of the Month, Tim King. Thank you for your dedicated service.
Oh, man.
And you know one thing
should have held on for a little bit longer.
One thing that's interesting. I just find it interesting.
Okay. It's just interesting to me how
we have been in many magazines. We have been on many, many different TV networks. We've been in, obviously, our local Pioneer Press, Star Tribune. We have still, to this day, never been in the West Central Tribune for business. We have been in the West Central Tribune for other things. You know, Danny, I'm surprised he didn't bring this up already. It was a goalkeeper of the
century
of the week or
king
something.
size turnaround.
What was it?
I mean, I was in the paper after every game because I was the goalie on the soccer team. And then there were articles that were written about me, written about our team, because I was on like the first winning team.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time to be a Wilmer high school soccer player. Let's just say that. Wilmer soccer has king size turnaround. If you Google that article will pop up. I guarantee you it will.
So anyway, it's we still have that to this day. One of those chips that's stacked high on my shoulder is the fact that we've yet to be featured business-wise in the West Central Tribune. One day
we'll get there.
We'll be a big enough success to get featured in the West Central Tribune. Let's talk about our favorite job.
Landscaping. Hands down our favorite job. Hands down our favorite boss. This was a guy who went to our church that's a Chris Collinsworth. Now here's a guy who that's like such a Chris Collinsworth statement. But here's a guy who owns an awesome business, construction company, but he has all these sons. And one owns a landscaping company and one owns a tiling company.
You talk about monopoly.
And this was such a well-oiled machine. And all of these guys worked together.
Yeah, so one of the sons
hired each other.
One of the sons did tile. One of the sons did landscaping. One of the sons did wasn't it HVAC or something? It was somebody with vents. It was either a son or like a friend of a son.
I think friend of son.
But they were roommates. They built a house, a family home, and then they lived there and they had like other people renting from it. It was like this genius
pretty
situation.
Sweet deal.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got looped in on the landscaping side of this business.
I remember the first time our first day, we're sleeping on a Saturday morning and the door opens and mom comes in with the home phone, the cordless phone. She's like holding over this receiver and she's like, Dan's on the phone. And I just woken up. I'm like, what? She's like, Dan's on the phone. I told him that you guys could go work landscaping today. And I remember being like, get out of here. Why are you agreeing to something? I'm not even out of bed. But he called, I guess, first thing in the morning, wanted the King boys to come help. And my mom agrees to it and then has to get us out of bed to go do the job. I don't even remember what she told him we would be comfortable taking as payment.
I don't remember either what we ended up making, but it was a really good job. I remember it was like a personal project for Dan. We rebuilt a retaining wall and we had his like right-hand man and we were figuring it out together. And I identified then, it was that day, first day on the job. Oh, these types of jobs, you actually have to be really skilled and be a really good problem solver. Because this was a retaining wall that had been moving forward and there were some pieces falling off. So we had to get really strategic because it was a really specific kind of rock that you couldn't buy anymore. Our solution was we ended up breaking tile to fill in gaps and build that wall back up. And I'm sure sturdy wise, it wasn't the best move.
It's probably not still standing.
But watching that guy solve that problem was really interesting. And then from there, we kind of turned into miscellaneous. We did a whole bunch of different things, but my favorite thing was laying sod.
Yes.
I loved laying sod.
We ended up working for the family, essentially, where we worked for it was oftentimes primarily for the son who did the landscaping. So we did sod, but also other landscaping. But we still worked for his dad as this was when I learned, okay, some people are just willing to pay for things because it's not what it costs, it's what it's worth. For Dan, the dad, the patriarch, it was worth him to pay us to tag along with him and just ride in the car, hop out of the car. Hey, can you just go check in, run in this house and pick up these rent checks?
Yes,
because he would just drive around. He didn't want to get out of the car. So we would say, I remember thinking, I want to go with Dan today. I want to go with Dan because he would also, we'd drive through Dairy Queen.
Oh yeah.
What do you want?
Dan was on the Atkins diet. And his wife would always make all of us workers like a home cooked meal. But Dan was not Dan. Dan was actually not on the Atkins.
I hate to break it to you, but this, unfortunately,
this meal you slaved away in the kitchen for, Dan is undoing it in an hour on the road. But yeah, I think it was just one of those things where Dan just wanted people to be around, and he was a great hang. I was 14 or 15 years old when we started this, and Dan would let me drive. They owned they had done all the houses in this like big community.
I feel like builder developments are very common now. Then 25 years ago, they weren't very common. And Dan was the first in our community anyway to do like a builder development, but it was very high-end upscale development at the edge of a golf course. He had the nicest house in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, he did.
He spent a lot more time on his house than he spent on any of the other homes, but he was like kind of the OG developer in our community.
And he would just give me the keys to his truck, his 1-ton, and let me drive. Oh, can you go down and find Doug? That was the guy's name, the right-hand man.
Yeah.
Can you drive around and find Doug and ask him this or get this from him? And just like toss me the keys as a 14, 15-year-old kid. What's better than that?
Nothing.
Driving around a 1-ton truck, not wearing my seatbelt. I remember thinking none of the guys wore their seatbelts.
I know.
And it was so cool
sweet
to not wear your seatbelt. So I'm not wearing my seatbelt driving around the development. Man, that was a good job.
Speaking of not wearing your seatbelt, final thing, valet.
Now, this was a college job, and I'm trying to remember. I think we just needed a job in college. We just needed a job.
Yeah, we were broke.
We had no money.
We didn't have any money. Dan, we couldn't work for Dan anymore.
Yeah.
We couldn't get free Dairy Queen from Dan anymore, so we had to find something else to do.
But that was a fun, enjoyable job. Definitely got us into the city, got us into kind of this life of crime. No, just kidding. This life of, there's like wealthy people that
it
exist.
Opened our eyes a lot. Yeah, it did. And it also got us accustomed, very, very early, to having conversations with people who are at a much different financial stage than you, a much different tax bracket, but being able to speak to them with confidence as an equal, even though you know that you're not.
Yeah, you're the valet.
But speaking to them with authority and with confidence and sticking to what you're saying. I'm sorry, sir. No, I'm not going to park your car for free because you want me to leave it out front. I understand. I'm just pulling it forward 5 feet. You still have to pay like everyone else. It got us comfortable sticking to our guns and being direct right back.
And it also opened our eyes to the idea, again, reiterating that things don't just cost one thing based on what it is. There are people who will be willing to spend more money that we can now prioritize in a different way. Oh, you want one of these spots? Got it. Hands out. Like the Home Alone butler from,
The plaza.
hands out.
Although, unlike him, we would not have accepted chewed gum.
Yeah, fruit striped gum. But those types of things that are life lessons, really. I think valet was really helpful. Not only did it open our eyes to like, oh, there's ways to make money outside of like on campus jobs. We can go into the city, essentially work for a restaurant, be incentivized in different ways, make real money, kind of be in charge of this small part of a bigger business.
You stick with that company long enough. I mean, there was a lot of turnover because it was just one of those jobs, but it was, we both were supervisors then at one point. No, we were no longer the runners. We were the supervisors. So we were the ones who were taking the money and we were charging the customers and we were
getting our friends to come and work alongside us.
Yep. And we were the ones who had to be on the phone and dealing with the customer. If one of the valets who went home early had keys in his pocket, you'd be surprised how many times that happens.
Or one of the valets. I remember this so vividly. There was one of the guys when I was supervising. One of the guys was trying to get into a car that he thought was the right car. And this was you put the key in and you turn it to unlock it.
This is, again, still the early 2000s.
It was the wrong car. So of course it wasn't going to open. But he bent the key into the exterior lock.
Oh, no.
And so we were so busy, so we left it for a while and we're like, I'll let you know.
At some point we'll figure it out.
At some point we'll figure it out. When the guy whose keys are in there needs his car and we don't have the ticket, we'll know. So I remember going out there.
Fast thinking there.
And taking it so slow, but bending it out and driving up with the car. You would have thought, with the guys that I had, you would have thought that I had just conquered the world. Like Alexander the Conqueror is back. The way that they were like, oh, when I came back with the right vehicle that had the bent keys in the wrong vehicle, that was a pretty cool moment.
Well, congratulations.
That's about as good as it got.
That's pretty big stuff. This was also, just side note, and then we'll wrap it up. This was the early 2000s is when car companies stopped making physical keys and started making fobs. So we were in that sort of time warp.
Everyone forgot they had the fob in their pocket.
So there were a lot of people who would go home with key fobs in their pockets. And I remember being just so dumbfounded by the science behind it, where it's like you could have multiple key fobs in multiple pockets and driving someone else's car. And
so weird.
Oh my gosh, it was the worst because you had to get in the habit. Speaking of routine is important. You got to get in the habit of putting the key fob away after you drive the car. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of fobs in your pocket. You're going to get cut. You're going to go home. And all of a sudden, it's my job to have to figure out who's missing their car keys.
Key fobs were so new that even the customers weren't used to it. They would, oh, hey, thanks so much. And they'd walk into the restaurant with the key fob in their pocket. So it's like, okay, go find that guy.
And this is not a business lesson, but this is just a personal lesson. Last night we're out for dinner and I valeted my car, and Madeline and I were talking, and we were saying, some people would say, I could park my own car and walk. I'm always happy to valet. I like doing it. It is convenient, of course, but that's something I'm always happy to pay for it. I'm always going to tip the valets very generously because I know what it's like. And last night it was like below zero. So yeah, I know what that feels like, and I know how hard they're working. And yeah, I want to valet my car.
Remember when we talked about the tax preparer who embezzled from us, and we said that Minnesota had been on this white collar crackdown because there were some Ponzi schemes that had happened locally? One of the restaurants that I was a regular valet at, one of those Ponzi scheme guys owned it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, as the supervisor, one of my jobs was to keep his car warm, which meant just drive it around. Just drive it around the city. And then all of a sudden, cell phones were around. So I'd get a call. Time to pull it up. That was a pretty fun experience. Driving the Ponzi schemer's car all throughout, thinking he was a legitimate businessman.
Yeah, well, we all
wearing his sunglasses and pitch black, just pretending I'm him.
We all learned a lot of valuable lessons from valet. It sounds like. Thanks so much for coming along down this trip down memory lane. I'm sure you've worked jobs too that you're like, I kind of still use that skill. You'll learn something at every job, but ultimately, work is work. It's not all going to be fulfilling. It's not all going to be your dream come true, but there are lessons that we can all take from all of the jobs that we've had. Thanks so much for coming to this appointment. This appointment's over. We'll see you for your next one.